Hey guys, Todd here. Today we're going to install the Amp Research Smart Series PowerSteps on this 2019 and up body style Ram 1500. Now, this is the quad cab, but it's the same installation as the crew cab. The tools I'll be using for this installation are a 13mm ratcheting wrench, a ratchet with a 10mm and 12mm sockets, a 4mm and 3/16 Allen wrench, a pry tool, a tape measure, a hammer with a center punch, a drill with an 1/8 inch and 9/32 bits, and a wire stripper crimping tool. Now make sure you're subscribed to our channel to stay up to date with our latest content. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you've got a crew cab pickup, you can just skip this step. We have a quad cab, so we actually need to make the boards shorter than what they come from the factory. So this board I've already cut down. It's 72 inches long. This board is the way it comes from the factory. It's 79 inches long. We need to make it 72 inches long. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is remove the end cap. So what you're going to do is just kind of wiggle that off. Once you've got that off, you're going to take a tape measure and measure off 7 inches and mark the board 7 inches in. Then you can go ahead and take an appropriate saw and cut off 7 inches. But keep in mind, on the bottom of the board, we've got some nut plates. You want to make sure those stay inside the board because with the end cap off, these can come out. Also make sure you stay away from the 7-inch mark where you cut the board because you don't want to cut these as well when you're cutting the board. Once you've got the board cut, like this one right here, you can take the end cap and put it back on. But with a cut board, what they're going to do is they've also given you an extra S-clip just like this one, and it needs to be facing the opposite direction that this S-clip is facing. So we're going to put that on here like so. Just push it into the end cap. And then we can line it up and push the end cap back onto the board. Just like so. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and assemble our motor to our motor linkage. Now this is the driver's side motor linkage. The passenger side is just like it, just a mirror image. I've already removed the tape that was holding this together, so this dust cover is loose. What we're going to do is extend the linkage. As I extend the linkage, you can see that gear move. And then I'm going to take the motor and I'm going to line it up to the holes in the linkage. And this all has to line up together, and the gear has to tooth into the gear that's on there. So you may have to adjust the linkage a little bit to where the motor drops into place and the holes line up. Next, we're going to use the provided hardware, and we've got 3 bolts with washers. We're going to fit them in place. And then we're going to tighten them down with a 4mm Allen wrench. Don't over tighten them, just get them nice and snug. The torque spec is 36 inch-pounds, which is 3 foot-pounds. So they don't have to be too tight. All right, repeat that for the passenger side linkage. Okay, so right now we're on the driver's side underneath the truck, just behind the front tire. Here's our front body mount bolt. What we're going to find right here is a harness attached to a bracket. We need to relocate this harness back on a different bracket. So the first thing we need to do is release the harness from the bracket. So I'm going to use a pry tool, a little fastener removal tool, and pull the harness free from the bracket. Next, I'm going to take a 10mm and remove the 3 bolts that hold the bracket in place, and I'm going to retain 2 of those bolts. Okay, so now we're going to take our relocation bracket. We're going to go ahead and loosely put that in place with the 2 bolts that we retained. Use the factory mounting locations. And then we're going to take and pop this hole into location on the bracket. And once that's in place, we can go ahead and tighten this down using the 10 millimeter. All right, now our harness is out of the way. Okay, now directly across from where we just installed that relocation bracket, you're going to find 3 studs in the rocker panel. Now, if those studs are covered with paint, you want to make sure you thoroughly clean all that paint off of those studs with something like a wire brush. Okay, now we can go ahead and raise our driver's side linkage bracket, set it in place, line it up to those factory studs. It is a tight fit, but it does work. Once we have that in place, we want to go ahead and install our 3 nuts on these flanges. Okay, now for the stud on the side that has a motor, what you're going to do is rock that out, put the nut in place, get it started, and then you can start working it down. Then we're going to go ahead and tighten that down with a 13 millimeter. You want to make sure you do this side first, because when the other side's done, this won't be able to pry out. Once that's in place, you can go ahead and install the other 2 nuts, and then we'll tighten them down with a 13 millimeter. All right, now as we move back to the very back of the cab, we're going to find one more set of studs. Again, if they are coated with paint, you want to clean those off. Next, we're going to take our idler linkage and we are going to line it up to the 3 factory studs, and again put on the 3 supplied nuts and tighten them down with a 13 millimeter. Okay, when we set the board in place on top of the brackets, one thing you're going to notice is we've got the 2 T-nuts that are in here. Now those T-nuts have 2 threaded holes in each T-nut. What we need to do is slide that over to where it lines up to the 2 holes in the bottom of the bracket. So what we're going to do is slide that over. Then, all right, once we've got those holes lined up and set into place, we also want to make sure that this board is adjusted 7 inches from the front of the front linkage. So that end cap, or 7.5 inches, that end cap needs to be 7.5 inches off of the front linkage. All right, now once we have the T-nut lined up, go ahead and very carefully line up the supplied Allen head bolts using a 3/16 Allen wrench. We're going to put them in place and snug them down. Make sure you are not cross-threading these. And that will cause the board to come down and seat into place. We're also going to do the same on the rear, where we line up the nut plate to the board and tighten it down with a 3/16. We're also going to do the same on the rear, where we line up the nut plate to the board and tighten it down with a 3/16. And last bolt. Okay, so the relocation bracket only happens on the driver's side, but we're going to go ahead and repeat the exact same process for the brackets and the running board for the passenger side. Okay, so here is our wire harness. Now, I've already gone with our positive side. I've removed the 2 fuses from our fuse holders. What we're going to do is connect the positive side to the positive terminal of our battery, the negative to the negative terminal of our battery. So what we're going to do is pull this back. We've got a nut here that we're going to use a 12mm pull off and attach our harness. And with the back one, we're using a 10mm. All right, now the end of the harness, we've got a plug. We're going to go ahead and connect our brain box to that plug. Okay, now before we secure our brain box in place, we want to go ahead and route all of our wire harnesses. So this on the harness, this is our trigger wire. For right now, we're just going to kind of tuck this on the other side of the battery. We're going to come back to that. Then here, we've got the other 2 sides of the harness. One is longer, one is shorter. The shorter side, what we're going to do is we're going to route down along the wheel well and down along the frame on the driver's side. The longer one is going to go across the engine bay, down that side wheel well, and then down along the passenger side frame. Let's go ahead and route that. Right there. All right, hold on, slow down, slow down. All right, go ahead, pull. And that's good. All right, that's it right there. All right, so here is where our harness is coming down the wheel well. What we're going to do, here's our fender liner. We're going to go over top of where our body mount bolt and frame cup is. I'm going to go over top of that and feed it out through here. So let me just go ahead and feed that through. And here is our plug for our harness. We're going to go ahead and plug that in. This is for the motor. We can go ahead and pull this the rest of the way through and secure it in place. Okay, now we're here outside the truck. This is the pinch weld of the truck. Here is our front bracket. This is the driver linkage. And here's our harness coming down. What we're going to do is we're going to measure from our bracket back about 7 inches, and we're going to mark our pinch weld. Now, the reason why we're going to do that is because we're going to drill a hole into the pinch weld for our light harness. Now, you want to make sure that when we put our hole, that above where the hole is on the rocker panel is clear of any kind of obstructions, because this is where our light kit is going to go. It's going to adhere right there and go through that hole. So we're going to start with an 1/8 inch drill bit and drill through, and then move up to a 9/32. All right, and first we're going to go ahead and hit this with a center punch. Okay, just as a quick tech tip, it's a good idea to use a cutting oil. I'm using Tap Magic on the drill bits. That way it goes through a lot easier. Okay, now I've already gone ahead and removed all burrs from that hole. Next, in your kit, you're going to have some grommets, little rubber grommets. I've gone ahead also and put just a touch of grease on the back side of the grommet. That's going to help it slip through the hole. What I'm going to do is work it through and get it nice and seated into that hole. Okay, I went ahead and cleaned off this surface right here of the paint with some rubbing alcohol to get it prepped for our adhesive. Next, what we're going to do is take our light bank, run the wire through our grommet. Once that gets pressed through, we'll go ahead and remove the adhesive protector off the back side. And then set up in place and bear down with some pressure for about 15 seconds. All right, now we can go ahead and connect this to our harness. Okay, so now here is our harness. What we've got at the end of our harness here is where we're going to attach to our lights. We've got two wires, the red wire and the black wire. Red wire obviously is going to go to the red wire, black is black. First, on our harness, we're going to want to strip back about 3/16 of an inch of insulation. We're going to use the 16 gauge strand. Okay, so we've also got some heat shrink butt connectors in our kit. What we're going to do is go ahead and set that up into our crimper. Push the end of our wire in and crimp it down nice and tight. Then we can separate the wires up top. This is already separated here with the insulation, so we can just kind of peel that off. Set our crimper up. Slide that in and crimp it down nice and tight. We'll do the same with our black wire. Okay, now I'm going to use a heat gun. You could also use a butane torch. Okay, for our rear LED light placement, we're going to put that 8 inches in front of the rear bracket. So the process is going to be exactly the same. Okay, now before you connect the rear harness, make sure you have that routed where you want it, because you're not going to be able to reroute it after you've already attached it to the wires. Okay, once we're all done, we can go ahead and secure our harness next to our frame with some zip ties and repeat the entire process on the opposite side. Okay, now we are inside on the driver's side underneath the dash. This right here is our brake pedal. When you look back here, this is our steering column going through the firewall. To the left of that steering column, we've got a rubber boot. If you peel that rubber boot back, you'll see a little spot where I made an incision. What we're going to do is we're going to force a rod up through there. I'm using a weld rod. You could also use like a straightened out coat hanger. We're just going to push it through. And now let's go underneath the hood and look at the other side. Okay, so we're back underneath the hood. This is the part of our cable that we set to the side to come back to later. Now is later. So this is our yellow trigger wire. What we're going to do now is reach down in here. I'm going to go ahead and grab. Here is my weld rod that I pushed through. What I'm going to do here is tape my trigger wire to the weld rod and then pull it back into the footwell. So I'm going to take some electrical tape. Grab that around there. All right, let me go ahead and pull it back through. All right, and we're going to go ahead and pull that through the boot. And then we can disconnect it from the wire. All right, now also in your kit, we're going to have an OBD2 port. We've got a yellow wire coming off of that adapter. What we're going to do with that is we're going to use our provided PosiTap connector to connect this wire to the yellow wire we just pulled through the boot. So we've got a little bit that's already stripped off of that. So what we're going to do is take apart our PosiTap. We just untwist it. We take this end and slide it over top. And it's going to stop as it hits the insulation, and then twist that back together into it. That attaches our PosiTap to that end. Now we can go ahead and unscrew this end. All right, now for the part that we just pulled through the boot, we want to make sure we only have about 3/8 of an inch of wire exposed from the insulation. What we're going to do is take the other side of the PosiTap or PosiLock connector, slide it over top, and then we're going to push them together just like so, and then twist it until it connects. Pull on it, make sure it's nice and connected. Next, we're going to go ahead and connect this up underneath the dash. Okay, now to get this connected up inside the dash, what we're going to do first is remove this panel. The way we're going to do that is we're just going to kind of pop some stuff loose a little bit. We're going to pull this gasket away, and then we can kind of reach in here and push in on the panel. Then run our finger along the side. That panel comes right out. All right, so now what you can see through this access here is we got a couple of green blocks. That's a couple of rows of ports that we can plug into. That's what this is going to plug into from underneath. Now, we can't get a good camera angle in there, but whenever you look up from underneath the dash, you'll be able to see an open port on a green block. Go ahead and plug this into the open port. Okay, now we can go ahead and reinstall our panel, so make sure you line up these 5 clips to the 5 holes in here. We're going to work it back behind. Set it in place, pops right in, and then we can put our gasket material back in place and pop down the kick panel. Okay, here is our onboard diagnostics port underneath the dash, also known as OBD2. This is our OBD2 adapter that we've just installed. Basically what we're going to do is just plug our adapter into the port, and we can take all of our wires and tie them, secure them out of the way underneath the dash. Now, as an alternate installation method, if you feel like this is hanging down too low, it's actually very easy to disconnect your OBD2 port and pop it up into the dash, connect this up to the port, and then tie everything out of the way. That way it's not hanging down at all. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to pop it in right here. Okay, now we can go ahead and reinstall our fuses into our 2 fuse holders. We can test the operation of the steps. Okay, so when we open the door, the steps should deploy and the light should come on the side that we open the door. Closing the door, you should have about a 2-second delay and the step retracts. Well, that concludes the installation. If you found this video helpful, make sure and give us a thumbs up. If you want to know more about the product, check the link in the description below. And as always, if you have any questions, call the experts or visit us online at RealTruck.com.